I don't know what's more dangerous, this storm or the thing my dog refuses to let me see. The wind howls like it's in pain, rattling the cabin windows so hard I think they'll shatter. I can barely see the tree line through the snow. White out. Conditions, the kind that swallow up the world in silence and blur. But I can see him. Bane, he's out there again, curled up at the base of that old birch tree. Snow clings to his back, his ears, his tail. His black coat is nearly white from frost. He hasn't moved in hours. I pound on the window. Bane, come inside. Nothing. I shout louder. My voice is lost in the wind. God damn it. I throw on my coat, gloves, boots, whatever I can grab. I've never been more pissed off at him or more scared. This cold can kill. Even him. Even me. By the time I push through the drift and reach him, my eyelashes are crusted with ice. Bane, I gasp, kneeling. You're going to freeze to death. What are you? That's when I see it. He shifts just enough to reveal what he's curled around, a patch of snow that's sunken, disturbed, dark, and in the center of it a piece of old stained fabric, frayed at the edges, like it's been buried here a long time. Bane growls softly when I reach for it. I hesitate. Then I crouch down, my glove brushing the cloth. It's warm. 4 weeks ago, I wouldn't have believed any of this. Back then, my world was already frozen, emotionally anyway. The kind of cold that starts in the chest and creeps outward, slow, merciless. I'd signed the divorce papers in November. My ex-wife and I had barely spoken during the proceedings, but we'd both cried in the parking lot afterward. Not for each other, for the little ghost between us. When the lawyer handed me the deed to this cabin, my grandfather's old place in the Adirondacks, I thought, maybe I can disappear for a while. Maybe I could mourn properly, in silence. I packed up Bane and drove north. I didn't tell anyone. The first week was peaceful, still, remote enough that even the sky felt bigger. The cabin's crooked walls groaned like they were alive, and the wood stove smoked if I didn't feed it right, but I didn't mind. Bane didn't mind either. He took to the place fast. He's a rescue, a German Shepherd mix. Stoic, sharp-eyed, not the kind of dog to bark at squirrels or chase shadows. Always alert, always loyal, a quiet guardian. We spent our days hiking frozen trails, our nights in front of the fire. I barely turned on my phone. I didn't want the world. I only wanted to be still, to feel something or maybe nothing. Then things changed. It started with the dreams. I'd wake up around 3 a.m., heart racing, certain I'd heard someone whispering from inside the walls. The wind outside seemed to carry words, though I couldn't make them out. I blamed the creaking, of old timber, the sleep deprivation, the loneliness, but Bane heard it too. He'd stand at the door at night, ears up, tail rigid, staring into the black, growling low in his throat. The first time he did it, I thought maybe a deer had wandered too close. Then it happened again. And again. And always. He was staring at the same patch of forest. One night I stood next to him, watching. There was nothing. Just the trees, the wind, and the ever-thickening snow. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching back. 2 nights ago, Bane wouldn't come inside. He stood at the edge of the porch, tail stiff, ears pinned. His breath puffed out in angry bursts as he stared toward the birch tree behind the house, dead center in the clearing. He didn't bark. He just watched. Tense. Waiting. I begged him, pleaded. Even tried to drag him inside, but he jerked away. Eventually, I gave up, figured he'd come in when he got cold enough. But when I woke the next morning, the back door was covered in deep, ragged scratch marks. His scratch marks. I opened the door to find him still out there. His fur was rimed with frost. His nose was pale, but his eyes were alert. He wasn't tired. He was guarding. It didn't make sense. I grabbed a blanket and rushed toward him. "Bane, please," I muttered, wrapping the blanket around him. He barely moved. I looked down. The snow beneath him had been disturbed, No, dug out. A small, shallow hole. At first, I thought maybe he'd uncovered a squirrel den or something, but then I saw it. A corner of fabric. Old. Yellowish. Stained. Something about it made my stomach twist. I knelt down, brushing more snow away. The cloth was wrapped around something bulky, something that shouldn't be warm. I pressed my hand against it. It was giving off heat. Like a living body, I jerked my glove off and touched it bare-skinned. Still warm. I looked at Bane. His ears went flat. His eyes said, "Don't." But I couldn't help it. I gripped the edge of the cloth and slowly pulled it back. A flash of texture. Something leathery. Or was it flesh? I pulled more snow away, revealing a strip of fur. But not animal fur, not like any I'd seen before. It was patchy, with skin beneath that looked almost human. My breath caught in my throat. Was it a person? A creature? Some kind of... I stumbled back. And Bane. He didn't chase me, didn't follow. He just lay back down, curled around it tighter, like he was shielding it from me, or shielding me from it. End of section 1. Cliffhanger. The cloth-wrapped object is warm and appears biological, something unnatural. Bane refuses to leave it. I couldn't sleep. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that fabric. That thing. The half-rotten pelt wrapped beneath Bane like a shroud. I tried to convince myself it was just some animal skin. Maybe a hunter's leavings, stitched together as bait. But something about it I felt wrong. It was shaped too precisely. Almost like a cloak. Or worse, a shroud. And the way Bane wouldn't let me get too close. Low growls rumbling in his chest, teeth barely bared. Told me whatever it was. It wasn't something he wanted me touching. I brought him inside that night by sheer force of will and bribery. I wrapped him in a thick blanket, wiped the frost from his whiskers, and stared at the faint smear of what looked like sap or something darker on my gloves. He didn't sleep. Neither did I. At 3:13 a.m. sharp, he sprang up from the floor with a growl and launched himself at the north wall of the living room, not barking, not whining, snarling, scratching. I yelled at him to stop, pulled him back, but his hackles were raised and his eyes were wild. He was staring through the wall like something was on the other side. Or inside. That was the first time I heard it. Faint, distant. A soft sound beneath the floorboards, almost like crying. Not a baby's cry. Thinner. Almost empty. Like grief echoing off the walls of an old hollow cave. I pressed my ear to the floor, my pulse pounding so hard it made me dizzy. There was nothing. Or maybe I just didn't want to hear it again. I told myself the wind made strange noises out here. Wood settled. Mice moved through crawl spaces. I tried to believe that. The next morning, Bane was back outside before I could even grab my coffee. Back to the same spot. But this time, he wasn't digging. He was just watching the woods, watching something that wasn't there. The pelt was still under the snow, partially uncovered now and crusted with frost. I forced myself to look at it again. The edges were stitched all right. Thick black thread, irregular, pulled too tight in some places and loose in others. My stomach turned. This wasn't a hunter's work. It looked like someone trying to hold something together that didn't want to stay whole. I took a photo and emailed it to a friend from college who worked in wildlife preservation. His reply came back in under 5 minutes. "That's not from any animal I've ever seen. Is that human hair?" I deleted the email. That same day, I started noticing other things. Small things at first. The photos on the mantle, of my parents, of my ex, of the one photo I had left of my little sister. They were off. Tilted at odd angles. One was completely flipped around. I hadn't touched them. I know I hadn't. And then there were the dreams. I saw snow, falling sideways. A figure standing at the tree line, too tall, too thin. Its face, or the space where a face should be, was smooth, white, empty like polished bone. It raised one arm, slow and deliberate, and pointed at me. When I woke, Bane was sitting on my chest, eyes locked onto the window, breathing shallow. Watching, I didn't want to go back outside, but I had to. Something was happening, and I couldn't pretend it wasn't. That afternoon, I sat on the cabin floor, wrapped in a blanket, and went down a rabbit hole online. Local history sites, archived news pages. I searched the area, the address, the previous owners, and that's when I found the article. Local boy vanishes. Mother says he spoke to the snow. It was dated February 5th, 1981. A 9-year-old boy named Owen Grant disappeared from his home. His mother reported that for several nights in a row he'd spoken about a man in the snow who came to his window and asked him to play. She thought it was imaginary, until she woke up one morning to find his boots by the daughter, the front steps freshly disturbed, and her son gone. The last place they searched? The woods behind this very cabin. Back then it was a ranger station. It had long since been sold. No body was ever found. I shut my laptop and just stared at Bane. "Is that what you've been trying to tell me?" I asked. He stared back, tail unmoving. As if in answer, he stood and padded to the back door. He scratched once, then looked over his shoulder, waiting. I followed. The snow behind the cabin was thick, untouched, but Bane sniffed and walked with purpose, weaving between the trees until he stopped at a spot near the tool shed. I saw nothing at first, then he began digging. Fast, frantic, like he knew something was beneath. His claws scraped against something hard. I knelt down beside him and cleared the snow. My hands hit metal, a rusted iron ring. I pulled, and a large wooden panel emerged, half-rotted, smeared with what might have once been paint. A trapdoor, sunken, old. There were claw marks on the frame, fresh ones. It was locked, from the outside. I didn't know what to think. Who locks something from the outside unless they want to keep something in? Bane whined, backing away, his eyes still locked on the trapdoor. I wanted to do the same. I wanted to pretend I never saw it. That night I dreamed again, but this time it wasn't the snow sleeper standing in the woods. It was in my room, at the edge of my bed. No face, no eyes, but it spoke, not aloud, not in words, in my voice, and it said, "You brought him here." I woke up screaming. The crying under the floorboards had started again, louder, closer. And Bane? Bane was already gone, back outside, sitting by that trapdoor, waiting. The trapdoor groaned like it hadn't been opened in decades, probably because it hadn't. I'd had to dig around it just to get the frozen hinges visible, then spend hours with a crowbar and rusted lock cutter until it finally gave with a scream of splintering wood. Bane had stopped me twice, once with a growl, and once by literally standing between me and the door, tail rigid, eyes wild. I almost listened, but I had to know, had to see what was down there. The stench hit me first. Not rot exactly, something older, damp and earthy, like old books and mold, and something coppery underneath. I aimed my flashlight down the crumbling steps. The cellar, if you could call it that, was little more than a hole carved out of earth and time, half collapsed, its walls lined with stones that had shifted inward under years of frost. Icicles hung from the ceiling like teeth. The air was still, too still. I descended. The floor was packed dirt, frozen solid, except where it wasn't. In one corner, a patch of earth had been disturbed recently. I crouched, brushing aside debris. And there, beneath a sheet of ice and thawed snow, was a bundle wrapped in cloth. Bones. Small ones. I didn't breathe. Children's shoes lay beside it, weather-warped, still laced, still waiting. One red, one blue, and under the shoes, sticking. Out of the half-frozen mud was a book. No, a journal. Its leather cover was soaked through, the pages buckled and rimmed in frost. But most were legible. I sat there in the half-dark, flipping through the damp, shaking pages. It started with normal things, grocery lists, the names of neighbors, mentions of a boy, Timmy, and how quiet he'd become after his sister passed. Then things turned. It came again last night, just outside the window. The snow didn't fall right when it was near. Timmy said it told him it was cold, that it needed him to be warm. I think it smells sadness. I think it eats it. I didn't believe it, not at first. But the thing that stood on the porch, it wore her hair. Her hair, braided just like the day we buried her. The handwriting grew shakier as the entries continued. It promised. Said if I fed it my sorrow, it could give him back. I didn't know what that meant, I didn't care. Timmy came back the next morning, but his eyes, he's not cold anymore. But he makes the house freezing, and then the final page. I fed it my sorrow. It gave me back my son, but not his soul. The journal fell from my numb hands. A sound, soft, like breathing, echoed from deeper in the cellar. I didn't wait to see what it was. I ran. The trapdoor slammed shut behind me as I scrambled out, chest heaving, snow falling around me like ash. My breath fogged in front of me, too dense, too fast. Bane barked once from the tree line, not coming, close, not even looking at me, staring past me, at the house. When I finally got the courage to go back inside, I noticed it immediately. The warmth was gone. The fireplace was still lit, but the room felt like ice. My breath plumed before me like smoke. Every window was fogged from the inside, fingers of frost stretching in. I called for Bane. He wouldn't come. Instead, he circled the cabin, whining, tail tucked, occasionally barking toward the roof. Or the floor. I huddled by the fire, wrapped in every blanket I had. I told myself I was imagining it, the way the floor creaked just a little too often, the way the air carried that faint, almost inaudible weeping. But when the clock struck 3:13 a.m., all pretenses shattered. The sound started low. A sob maybe, but not quite human. Not child either. Just wrong. And it wasn't under the floor anymore. It was inside. The floorboards near the fireplace swelled upward, warping as if something below them was pushing up. The nails groaned. Dust scattered from the movement. I froze. And then, without thinking, I reached out and placed a hand on the floor. It was warm, not like heated wood, not like fire, like skin, like breath. And then I heard it. Let me out. It wasn't a whisper in the room. It was inside my head. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Soft, gentle, familiar. It's warm down here. Let me out. My hand recoiled, like I'd touched a stove. My throat closed. My vision swam. Because the voice, it was my sister's. Dead 10 years. Buried in another state. The flames in the fireplace guttered suddenly, as if sucked inward. The light vanished. The room plunged into darkness, and with it came a deep, suffocating cold that cut through layers, skin, memory. That's when I felt the scratch. Not on the floor, on my leg, Bane. His paw dragged across my thigh, frantic, urgent. He barked once, not loud but sharp. And that broke the trance. I fell backward from the floorboard, gasping, heart hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. And then I saw it. Between two cracked planks, barely wide enough to fit through, a hand reached up, small, pale, frostbitten, and in its fingers, tangled and unmistakable, was a lock of auburn hair. My sister's hair. The braid I buried her with. The hand flexed once, then slipped back into the dark. The crying began before I even opened my eyes. Muffled, guttural, too low to be human, too raw to be anything else. For a moment I thought I was still dreaming. Then I felt the cold again, not just in the air, but in the bones of the house. Like the walls were holding their breath. I sat up, blanket falling from my shoulders. Bane was gone from his usual place beside the fire. I found him in the back room, scratching, no, digging, with frantic desperation. His paws tore into the wooden floorboards like they weren't even there. Splinters flew. I called his name, but he didn't stop. That's when I realized he wasn't afraid of what was below. He was afraid of what might find it. I rushed to help, hands scraping and bleeding as I tore at the soft wood. Beneath it, frozen dirt. Then cloth. I paused. It wasn't the same bundle as before. Smaller, wrapped tighter, layered in furs that were stitched together with what looked like sinew and hair. As I peeled them back gently, reverently, I saw what Bane had known all along. Tiny bones, an infant. The skull had caved slightly with time. The ribs were delicate, curled in on themselves like the child had died sleeping. One hand was still clutching a carved wooden button. A toy. A memory. My stomach turned. Not from sickness. From sorrow. Because I understood. Bane hadn't been trying to scare me away from something evil. He'd been trying to protect this. This small, forgotten body. This secret the snow had tried to bury again and again. I carried the bones to the hearth, placing them gently beside the fire that now struggled to stay lit. Bane sat at my side, watching, waiting, and then the voice came again. "Let me out." It slithered up through the floorboards, coiling around my thoughts. I can give them back, all of them, warm, whole, laughing again. The fire flared, then dimmed, then flared again. My vision swam. I saw my sister's eyes, my mother's hands. I saw my childhood room. I saw everyone I'd ever lost, standing just behind the veil of heat. And for a moment, just a moment, I wanted it. I wanted them back. Then I looked at the bones in front of me, and I remembered the journal. It gave me back my son, but not his soul. I picked up the tiny bundle. It was light, so light, and somehow unbearably heavy. I knelt beside the warped floorboards where the hand had come through the night before. "I'm not feeding you anymore," I whispered. Silence. Then, "They were cold. I made them warm." I shook my head. "No, you stole them. You wear their voices. You trick us into hurting for you, into grieving longer. But you don't heal. You feed." The temperature dropped again. My breath clouded. The fire hissed like it had been spat on. Bane stepped between me and the warped boards, growling low in his throat. He didn't look scared anymore. Just ready. "You can't warm what's never been yours," I said. The floor split open. No caved. Like the house had given up fighting. The boards cracked and folded inward, revealing not a cellar, not soil, but depth. Darkness fell away below like the throat of some sleeping thing. The crying rose in pitch, from one voice to many, a chorus of grief, of manipulation, of hunger. The cold came next, a wind that howled from beneath the floor and swallowed the heat of the room whole. But we didn't run. I held the bones tightly to my chest, and I stood firm. The darkness surged one last time, and then imploded, dragging the voices, the false warmth, the warped memories down into itself like water down a drain. When the dust settled, there was nothing left. No floor, no trapdoor, just packed earth. I don't remember falling asleep that night. Maybe I didn't. Maybe the exhaustion claimed me the way silence claims an empty house. By morning, the sun had returned, dull and distant, but present. The birdsong came, hesitant but real. And Bane? Bane was asleep inside, curled at my feet, like none of it had ever happened. But I knew better. I buried the bones in a small grove just beyond the cabin where the light hit first and the snow always melted early. I planted a tree above them, a young sapling from the forest nearby. It stood awkwardly at first, crooked like it too had just survived something. Every morning, Bane and I walk there. I bring coffee. He brings silence. The ground still holds the cold, but it's natural now, honest. And the grief? It never left, but it feels real again. Mine. not something worn by something else to bait me deeper. One night I dreamed of my sister, again. But it was different this time. She sat across from me at the fire, older than I remembered. She was smiling. Whole. "You remembered me, right?" she said. And when I woke, the fire was still crackling. Warm. Alive. Bane was curled at my feet. The snow still falls here sometimes, but Bane doesn't sleep outside anymore. He only watches, just in case it comes back.